All right, it's a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Jonas Valanciunas says he wants an extension to continue on with the Pels. If they don't land another center, should they consider it? Plus, your questions live in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Thursday, a live show. We normally do these at 7 p.m. Central, but I got to do a couple of other podcasts here. So we got bumped it up a little bit earlier here, so I'm glad maybe people can make it in. Saints Uptown says, hey, this is dope. Never caught Jake live. Well, thank you for being part of the show today. We're going to talk about Jonas Valanciunas and him wanting an extension. Is that the right move for New Orleans? We'll talk about Brandon Ingram struggling a little bit with Team USA in FIBA, and we will answer your questions, which are probably going to center around jerseys and some other things. I know y'all. So, of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday, right now, Wednesday, Thursday live show, but it'll be back to 5 days a week before you know it. So I am excited for you making Locked On Pelicans part of your day. I see Ross Jackson in the chat, Locked On Saints, coming on through. My man going live right before me, sending people over. If you're coming over from Locked On Saints, thank you for being here. Pelicans should be in store for a very good season. So I am excited to be talking hoops with y'all. Jody Harrison, where you at, Jake? Been loving your content since Hornets 24/7. Yeah, that takes me back. Not exactly where I got started, but that was like the first big stop. Man, going back to Hornets 24/7 became bourbonstreetshots.com. Every day or 2 words. Sky Neal knows it. I'm him. Says every seconder. I'll take that. That works. Every other day is good too. I appreciate y'all making the show part of your routine. Tuning in however it is that you do. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, by the way, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. So let's start with Jonas Valanciunas. As we know, the Pelicans have been looking for a new center. That Jonas Valanciunas doesn't seem to be the person that they think fits long-term for this team. And it has truly nothing to do with Jonas Valanciunas and his talent level. He is a good basketball player. He's probably underrated, in my opinion, but he just doesn't fit. And there are limitations to his defending out there on the perimeter, which means they don't play him in the fourth quarters of games. I don't know if you can really pay a guy $15 million when you're $2.9 million into the luxury tax that the team doesn't want to be in if you're not going to play that guy clutch time and close games out with him. Hence the trade rumors, guys like Jarrett Allen. We know that they've reached out to the Cavaliers about him. They've reached out about Miles Turner. All of the names that you would expect, kind of trying to leave no stone unturned when it comes to, moving on from Jonas Valanciunas. And the way I've described this, and I was on WDSU last weekend talking about it, saying, again, it has nothing to do with his talent level as a player. It's more the Pelicans are looking at him like it's a breakup, right? Or it's not you, it's me. That's exactly what the Pelicans are saying here. You're a good player, but it just doesn't work for what we're trying to do here. Their defensive scheme is about switching on the perimeter. So when a pick and roll gets set, you guys are supposed to switch. So the big man covers the guard defends the big. JV can't do that. Larry Nance Jr., who they do close with, as Saints Uptown says, he can defend on the perimeter. He can switch. You can run other defensive schemes that Jonas Valanciunas can work in. There's drop coverage where the big man in the pick and roll kind of hangs back a little bit, takes a couple steps back, literally drops back, right? To remove the drive to the basket to try and take away the roll man. It just isn't what they do. And if they're not going to adapt the system to Jonas Valanciunas, it doesn't make sense to have him. But Jonas Valanciunas, in the final year of his contract right now, wants an extension. And with Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports was talking about saying he'd like an extension to go out and try and kind of finish off, continue everything they've done. And when you look at Jonas Valanciunas, this will be his third season in New Orleans. This dude is just like as consistent as they get in terms of games played. 74 games played his first year, no Zion that year. 79 games played last year. 17.8 points per game, 14.1 last season. He just goes out, rebounds, and will score and bang down low and bruise you up. He plays for Lithuania all the time in international play as he is right now and will be playing Brandon Ingram in Team USA coming up. So he's solid, And here's my take on this. So the question is, and this is my question for y'all. Say everything stays the same. Everything stays the same. I see Nola G says, Jake, seems like we can make JV work and just get a cheaper player to fill the end of his flaws. Let's say they don't make Jonas Valanciunas really work in the way they want, because it has more to do with his defense than anything else, right? You can make him work offensively. He does work offensively. But they're not going to really change the fundamental part of their defense. So say they don't really make it work and everything stays as it is. Are you, listeners, comfortable giving Jonas Valanciunas, say, a $12 million, a 2-year, $12 million extension? Even 2 years, 30, 15 million, something in that range, let's say. Kind of mid-level exception money is what we'd be looking at here. 2 years, $24 million, would you give him that extension, knowing that the salary cap situation for the Pelicans is not great? Would you do that offer, say, today for him? I could go either way on this. I do think that if they can't go out and find another center, that they probably need to lock up Jonas Valanciunas. You don't want to risk letting him walk for nothing, because when you look at it, they're not going to have any money to spend in free agency this coming off season. If you lose a talented player, and he is talented, like Jonas Valanciunas, you don't have then $15 million to go spend on a replacement. You have significantly less than that, let's say. And that's not a situation that the Pelicans want to really be in. You just don't want to let a guy go. But on the flip side of that, means you're still going to be in the luxury tax. You're going to have to pay that. And is Jonas Valanciunas, in one sense, the guy that you want to pay the luxury tax for? I don't really know if that's the situation that the Pelicans want themselves to be in. I'll tell you this, though. This is very much the MO of David Griffin to give out these kind of extensions. I don't think he really likes to have players that they maybe want to keep or have value to be in the final year of their deal. When they traded for Steven Adams in Zion's second year, they brought him in, or was it the first year? I forget at this point. They brought him in and they immediately gave him an extension in the trade. When they traded for Jonas Valanciunas 2 years ago, they gave him the 2-year extension onto the 1 year remaining on his deal. So extending these type of players seems to be what David Griffin likes to do. I think he doesn't want these guys to be able to walk for nothing. And in theory, if you sign JV for less money going into subsequent seasons, it might make it easier to trade him. If he's on one of those kind of like, all of a sudden now it's a 3-year deal, it declines on the back end of it. Those become a lot easier to stomach in trades. So I don't think there's any harm in trying to extend him. I like the idea of guys saying, even if it's just because they want to get paid, give me an extension. I'd like it in New Orleans. We don't always hear those sorts of things. So sometimes when you have a guy that's just a workhorse that you can rely upon, and can we rely upon Zion? BI? I hope so. We certainly hope so, but hasn't been the way it's gone so far. But JV is going to be out there playing. So if they can't trade him, they don't get a new starting center before the start of the year. I do think trying to extend him wouldn't be the worst thing. You can always just kind of then trade him later. And that's probably what they'll still end up looking to do. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Should they extend JV? Should they just immediately look to flip him? Or, and you see it on the side here as you're watching the show, do you want JaVale McGee? We can talk about him a little bit more too. And I'll explain why you're all wrong if you want JaVale McGee on this team, because you shouldn't. He's not going to do what you think. So we'll get into all of that and your other questions. I'm going to read out your comments as well in the live show. Coming up here next, we'll talk BI too. Coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. And all customers, so you're an existing FanDuel customer, you want something too, they've got you covered. All customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. You can watch all the football and find out exactly what you want to wager on. So now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans, your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast. We'll be back to 5 days a week before you know it, in about 3 weeks here. It's going to be a lot of fun. This team should be good. Everyone looks healthy. Zion's in shape, working out at the facility. You love to see things like that. If you really want to make a bet, their over-under for Vegas is 42.5. That over is kind of tempting, and that's kind of banking on bad health that number's so low. If you think they're going to be healthy, it's a big if. I don't know. That number could look really good, and FanDuel's the spot that I took the over on. So we just talked about Jonas Valanciunas here, and Hirsch, is it Hede, Hede, says, who's got the better beard, Valanciunas or Jake? Valanciunas has less gray in his hair, so I think he wins that battle. It's actually longer. He keeps it very well manicured. If you ever see him out there, he looks like the most Eastern European dude alive and just this big enforcer and exactly what you think. And it's pretty funny with everything here. JRIV says, I don't know when it comes to the Jonas Valanciunas extension because of Trey's future extension. That's at least another year away. So there's time to figure that out and deal with that later. The extension that Trey Murphy is going to get is going to be a max. Like, he's going to get the bag as much as he can. He will get a full-on, like, I call them mini maxes, that end of rookie extension max. Like, he is without a doubt going to get that. Slim Chilla says our coach was horrible with in-game adjustments. Wasn't the best. I think he's growing with that too, but you know, you don't always want to adjust to just adjust. If your defensive principle is switching on the perimeter, and that's what the Pelicans is, you don't just like deviate from that, especially if your guys haven't practiced other types of coverages. And by the way, if you actually want to read a lot about kind of like the X's and O's of the modern NBA, go by and read Spaced Out by Mike Prada. It's one of my favorite books recently on this. I actually just lent my copy to a friend that gives a great section about just pick and roll defense and how it all works, and you can learn more. Excellent book if you want to kind of know more from like the coaching, the X's and O's perspective of the modern day NBA. Like, that would be the first thing I would recommend anybody read to become like a smarter person when it comes to basketball and the coaching side of things right now. You know, but one of the things to keep in mind is, yeah, you can make adjustments, but if your guys don't practice that, those adjustments aren't going to work. And overall, the Pelicans' defensive scheme was good last year. They had the 6th best defense, and that's with Jonas Valanciunas out there, who's not good in certain things. So I don't know if you need to make adjustments to run drop with him and things like that. It's overall just working, and I think that's something to really keep in mind with all that. Thomas Atkinson says, hey, Jake, what is the official spelling of everydayer? It's every space dayer, D-A-Y-E-R. I checked with Corporate Locked On, your team every day, and that is confirmed the official spelling of everydayer here. So I love y'all being involved with the show, asking those kind of questions here. Elena G says, Jake got the better beard and an unmatched t-shirt collection. Got the Not on Herb shirt here today. We were rocking a good one yesterday too. I thought, other people thought as well. So let's get into Brandon Ingram and shift everything here and talk about him in FIBA. So in the third game against Jordan, Team USA, Steve Kerr made an adjustment and brought Brandon Ingram off the bench after having started him for the 7 previous games, the 5 exhibition games, and the 2 other ones that they had, or the 2 group stage games. Now, Team USA went 3-0, but the starters were largely uninspired. That is for sure. And just trying to try a different role for Brandon Ingram, I think worked and was good and something that needed to probably happen. It's interesting to see him struggle, especially when it comes to scoring and other things here in FIBA, because this is something that he should have done particularly well in. Part of that is maybe he just needed a better fit, because when you look at the guys that he was in the starting lineup with, you have Anthony Edwards taking an absolute ton of shots, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, right? You also have Jalen Brunson, who at times was just dribbling the air out of the ball, and that didn't really work particularly well because Brandon Ingram's more of an on-ball guy, and if he can't adapt to playing off ball, I think it's okay. I've seen a lot of people kind of throw hate at him and things like that and say, you know what? He needs to adapt. He needs to be better off ball. His role with the Pelicans is on ball as kind of that offensive creator for others, with the ball in his hands, doing Brandon Ingram things, moving CJ McCollum more off ball. Zion, handles the other possessions, but is more of a go-to scorer, I think, for the team. So I do think that him struggling to adapt is not a big deal. He's played a certain way with the Pelicans for the past 3-4 years now. I think it's entirely okay that if he's struggling to find that right role. With Brandon Ingram, if you want him to adapt, right, that's kind of just turning him into a catch and shoot guy. Stand on the 3-point line, wait for kickouts, then shoot the 3 and do the thing. That's not the best way to use him, I don't think. But when you put him on the bench and let him do his thing, all of a sudden, you just kind of saw it click a little bit more. In 15 minutes of action, he had 7 points. That's the best he's done so far. But more importantly than that, he had just 1 turnover and 5 assists, which was the second most on the team. It let him kind of go to his more natural playmaker, creator kind of role. Aramis Jones says it. He ended up having the most assists that game, second most assists. Halliburton had 6, he had 5. I think him being moved to the second unit is good for him for Team USA because it has less ball dominant handlers in the lineup. It's like Halliburton there. And then they play faster. So you're just getting out and running in transition where you can make the right read, the right kind of play. And that's what I think is kind of a great, great role for him when it comes to this. So I don't mind that he struggles with the starters because, what's he supposed to do? You're turning him into kind of a bad version of himself. You want him to go be Brandon Ingram, not someone else. So I don't view this as a negative on him. I'd like him to do better, certainly. That would be pretty cool. But it's also okay if he struggles a little bit because, the priority is him with the Pelicans. Now, keeping FIBA in mind here, Jonas Valanciunas also remarkably consistent. I don't remember when their game is against. Let me see if I can find it really quickly here. They do play. They have them coming up games. Let's see here. Where's their next game? They play Lithuania on Sunday. Tomorrow, early in the morning, they are got a bunch of other games too. Man, they're playing Montenegro tomorrow morning. Then Sunday against Lithuania. If they win basically one of those, they should advance. So they're going to be in a good spot here. The Lithuania game is going to be fun. That's at 7:40 Sunday morning. There's going to be a lot of great stuff going on. You get the Formula One race then too. So some great kind of action out there early Sunday morning when it comes to sports. I think he's going to be fine, though. I don't think this says really anything about him as a player, and I think to try and read into this too much doesn't really mean much of anything, right? Like, he's not a role player. Josh Hart's a role player. They put Josh Hart in to go do the Josh Hart things, and he went out and did and just made those kind of hustle plays. That's not what Brandon Ingram's game is. He can still do some of that, certainly, but Hart going out there and grabbing 12 rebounds, yeah, that makes sense. Then you put Brandon Ingram with the second unit, let him get some points, let him create for others, and his plus minus ends up looking a whole lot better as he leads that second unit to just being largely efficient. That works. Don't read too much into it. You know, it's a different game. It would have been nice to see him dominate, but it's okay here. Denzel Horton, everydayer comment. I love it. JH15, trade Valanciunas and Kyra Lewis Jr. for Gafford and Della Wright. You know, I think you could do something like that. We can talk more about the center position. We can talk more about hypothetical trades. We can talk about whatever y'all want, because we're getting into the third segment, and that means it is your time to shine. So let's get into that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about the team. If you want to support the channel, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Comment down below on YouTube every day and become an everydayer so that you are listening Monday through Friday. For your second listen, if you didn't come on over from Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson going live right before me, go check out Locked On Saints. Season is right around the corner. I am excited for everything black and gold, and Ross is doing probably the best job out there covering it in the podcast and YouTube realm. That dude is just good. Saw him this past weekend. Might even see him this weekend. Nicest guy alive. Go support Ross Jackson. Make Locked On Saints your second listen today. So let's go through some of the comments here. We already said Denzel Horton, everydayer comment. I love it. If you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Genova says everydayer as well. I love to see that. Jessica Anderson is an everydayer. Thank y'all. It's awesome. Saints Uptown says no McGee, please. I'm not a fan of JaVale McGee. I think a lot of people are, and I think this is one of those things where, like, it sounds great in theory, but is not the case. We did a whole segment on Wednesday's show about no to JaVale McGee. Someone got like kind of, I think it was either in the YouTube comments or on Twitter. I think it was the YouTube comments, was like, you say we need rim protection. Now a rim protection mobile big is available. You don't want him. No, because they're in the luxury tax, and I don't want to pay more into the luxury tax for JaVale McGee. And I don't think JaVale McGee on this team is playing more than 10 minutes per game. So to double or even triple your luxury tax payments for 10 minutes of a guy that is slightly overrated, I don't think is really worth it for the Pelicans whatsoever. Jody Harrison has a very good question here, and I knew this one was going to come up, and I have more clarity on this one now. What do you think the future of Bally Sports New Orleans is, and what can the Pels do to keep games showing? So the game, you're going to be able to watch games. You're going to be able to watch games no matter what next season. From how I believe it's going to go, and this is not with any inside information, this is understanding how bankruptcies somewhat work, not from like firsthand experience, luckily, but just kind of getting how some of this goes and seeing how this is played out for other sports with Bally Sports, Diamond Sports, Sinclair, all of those things, I think is they're going to try and keep the NBA contract. Supposedly, they have enough money to keep making the payments to be able to still maintain the rights to air games. So I don't think this season, unless something really changes, and it could, so you can't hold me to this, I do think that Bally Sports is going to have the rights for Pelicans games this season, and that's the way that we will be watching it. You know, they own the streaming rights for basically all of the teams that they have in the NBA. In baseball, where they were trying to get rid of some of the rights for, Padres being a good example, they didn't own the streaming rights for them. They just owned the like linear TV rights. And that wasn't lucrative, and they weren't getting enough people to kind of do that. The streaming rights for a team are big and important, and Bally's, if they can make the payments, they're going to keep the rights because that contract still exists. Should something happen is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Say maybe they don't have the money. The league is ready to step in. the league is ready to step in and basically kind of force the change that you'll end up seeing eventually. I do believe the Pelicans are going to bring this in-house eventually. I think the games will be on Fox 8 locally here in New Orleans, and that's what it's going to be, right? I believe the preseason Birmingham games probably on Fox 8 again. It was on Fox last year too, kind of as like a trial run a little bit, I think. Denzel Horton says, why can't they just show games in the app? Eventually they might do that when they bring it in-house, but there is, money at play. The other thing I really urge you to think about with this, and I have a whole show on this. You can scroll back. There's a number of shows I've done about Bally Sports Plus and Bally Sports and the TV deal and everything is, they're paying the Pelicans to broadcast the games, right? They're paying New Orleans millions of dollars. I don't know the exact amount, and it's probably one of the lowest in the league, if not the lowest, but they're paying New Orleans, a team that is trying right now actively to not pay the luxury tax, right? Money has been a problem for this team in the past. It shouldn't be. It has been, though. These, again, are just the realities of the situation. So when everyone was celebrating the bankruptcy by Bally Sports, Sinclair, Diamond, whatever name we're using for them, that's not great because that is money that isn't going to be coming into the Pelicans. And does that mean they need to cut things elsewhere? Or do they just need to invest more in it? It's that one here. So that's something to consider too. Bringing it in-house is a big expense. You lose that revenue. You can try and make up for that by having your games more widely available and more people watching them, certainly. Maybe you charge more for commercials and other things, but that still needs infrastructure and all of that. So, there's a give and take, good and bad when it comes to this. I, personally found the Bally Sports Plus app fine. No real issues with it. The cameras were good. The quality was good. I didn't have a problem with it. It's not worth $20 a month to watch 15 Pelicans games a month, right? Like that's kind of what it comes down to. It's expensive when it could just be free or a much better product with other content and things like that. But that's not what they wanted to do. That I think is kind of the biggest problem, right? Like there's just an extra charge when it shouldn't be. But overall, I think the app was fine. It wasn't amazing. You just turned it on, watched the game, turned it off. Simple as that. I don't know. They could have put another show on there or something like that. But anyway, I think it'll still be on Bally Sports this year. And then I think after that, it definitely won't be. So we will see. JH15 says, is there something wrong with Christian Wood? Does he have a bad attitude or play style doesn't fit anyone? Would you offer him 1 year, $3.1 million? So yeah, he has a terrible attitude, right? Like this is a guy that has worn out his welcome on every team he's been on basically in one season. His attitude sucks. Dallas traded for him this past season, was supposed to kind of be like a big fit for them, either as a starter or their sixth man, and they couldn't wait to get out of the Christian Wood business. Houston, same thing. They wanted no part of him. Detroit, same thing. Like he's just not a dude that like you really want around the team. So when y'all worry about chemistry, right? Should you trade for Kevin Durant or not? Those type of things. Christian Wood doesn't fit. As a talented offensive player, because there's no defensive game that he has at all, well then, yeah, sure. 3.1 million works, but I don't want to pay the luxury tax for Christian Wood given the other issues, I think. He's just not a dude that, I don't know, gets me excited. Nola G says, do you think trading for Ayton would be a good move? If so, what would we have to give up? Yeah, I'd be all for trading for Ayton. I think he's a good player. He's definitely needs a change of scenery from Phoenix. He makes $20 million. We can look this up and find out and come up with a trade that makes sense here. I mean, the trade would need to involve him and Valanciunas, right? You can't have Ayton and Valanciunas on the team, and then it's just, what else do you give up? It's very possible to come up with a deal that only somewhat makes sense. Let me see. DeAndre Ayton makes how much? They signed him. Is it 20 or is it 25? Oh goodness, no. I was so wrong. $32.5 million next year, 34 the year after that, 35.5 after that. Trade's going to have to involve Jonas Valanciunas and then like CJ or something like that. That's tough to make work. This one just became like very tough to make work because then all of a sudden you're like deep into the luxury tax. And I just don't think that's realistic that the Pelicans are going to want to do that for a team that's still somewhat unproven. If he was at 20 million, which I guess is what he was before, yeah, sure. That makes sense. But at 34, 35, 36 million dollars, I think that becomes a whole lot harder. I'm trying to even like comprehend how you would do that. Valanciunas, Herb Jones, and some other salary filler. And do you really want to do that for DeAndre Ayton? I'm not so sure. So yeah, Noel G says, oh no on Ayton. No. That goes away pretty quickly when you start to look at the salary there. Gav Morg says, every day in rural Queensland. Thank you for being here. Saints Uptown asks, Jake, are you encouraged by Zion committing himself to get in shape and focus on his game? Yes, I love that he is here in New Orleans, working out, doing all the things. But we've also seen him do this before, get in shape and be committed. He was last year. It's what happens when you hit adversity. Does he have, like not a safety net, like what do you call it? Like a network, right? Something like that to be able to deal with any issues that arise in the middle of the season, to being out there on the court. How do you handle those sorts of, that sort of adversity? Is there a plan? Do you have the right people around you? Those are all the question. And that is what I'm not sure of. What's the talk about says JV bread better than yours? I get what you're trying to say. You can say that, but yeah, he probably bakes much better bread than I do because I don't bake any sort of bread here at all. Leon Alvarado, what type of centers could we trade Jonas for without giving up much draft capital? I mean, look, you can downgrade from him. You can downgrade. I don't think Gafford's better than him. I don't think any of those type of names that you would throw out are better than Jonas Valanciunas. So you don't maybe need to include a ton of draft capital. So you might need to get off of some contracts, so you could do it. I just don't want to. I'd rather keep Valanciunas if you're going to get a guy that's like worse. Pay the luxury tax and just keep the better player would be my personal take on this, and try and trade Kyra Lewis Jr. And yeah, that's what I would do. I saw a question about Kyra. Young Kilminati says, I think we trade Kyra and see how the season progresses before we deal for a center. Our draft picks make this plan possible. We'll draft our rim protector if we can stay healthy. Yeah, I think that's kind of like the plan right now, is roll into the season with the roster, right? Like if a trade was going to happen, it likely would have. Don't look at past trades because if you can try and kind of predict dates and things sometimes. And I just went over this with somebody and I had to kind of tell them, not so fast, my friend here. Let's get in the spirit of college football. ABJ 504, before I do anything, he gets called out because ABJ 504 literally every single day on YouTube writes comment. As simple as that, and I love it. Thank you, the most consistent dude here. If we could give out listener awards, ABJ 504 would absolutely be getting like a medal or an award or something here. I forgot what we were talking about. Oh, we're rolling into looking for trades. You look at that Steven Adams trade and it occurs like, late, deep into the offseason and like before, right before the season starts, except it was actually a pre-draft trade because that was a COVID year and things were shifted. So trades don't really happen here at this point. So this is likely the roster that they're going to go into the season with. JV15 says, I bet you still laugh knowing we signed Cody Zeller. Like, it's fine. He's not going to play much. It's just, break glass in case of emergency. Like, I don't mind that. Kendall Jones Sr. says, what up, Jake? Every day you're here. Go, Pels. Thank you for being part of the show, my man. Sinclair says we should have gotten Mo Bamba. Maybe. He went for much cheaper than I thought he was going to go for. I'll give you that one. I don't think he's particularly great. He was unplayable. The Lakers had him and they didn't do anything with him in the postseason. They couldn't play him. There's limitations to certain guys. So with the precarious salary cap situation that the Pelicans are in, I don't know. That doesn't mean you should pay the luxury tax for Mo Bamba, who's not going to play in the postseason for you necessarily. Maybe he would. Lonnie Live says, you're the best on Locked On Basketball, bro. Is that Locked On all of the network here? All of the hosts are also Locked On NBA, which I co-host every Wednesday with John Corrales of Locked On Celtics, and we have a lot of fun doing all of that. Josh Darby says, I'm with you, Jake, but I also like Kyra. I like Kyra in theory. Like, I like Kyra in theory with everything, but the problem is, I don't think, when he went down with that knee injury a couple of years ago, I don't think he was turning a corner. I've seen a lot of people say that. It's like, oh, he blew out his knee right as he was starting to have it all click. And I didn't see that from him. He still got the speed back. He shot in very limited attempts very well this past year. I'm happy about that. I'd like them to try him more, right? I don't know about doing that in the play-in tournament game like they did, where all of a sudden he was like the first guy off the bench. But they never gave him, after the injury, fully a fair shake, but they were also trying to get into the postseason. So it's one of those situations where it's like, this sucks. Things just didn't line up. Everything was kind of frustrating, and that wasn't like a lot of, I don't know, it just sucks. Those are the type of things that happen here. Slim Chilla asks, are the in-season tournament games considered home games? How does that work for season ticket holders? They're going to be just home and away games. It's just regular season games that were already going to be on the schedule that kind of do a little bit. They're lanyap. They just do a little something else, right? A little something more for them. And that's qualify you for the in-season tournament stuff, and doing everything. So don't worry too much about the in-season tournament. I kind of love it. I like them doing something differently. I was a big proponent of the play-in tournament. I think that has kind of revolutionized the end of the NBA's regular season, made it more competitive, and it's been a lot of fun. And those games are like really intense and really fun, the play-in tournament games, and a lot of fun to watch. So I really enjoyed when the NBA just tries something differently. Look, you shouldn't get too excited about, hanging a banner from the rafters for the in-season tournament. But look, if you can go do something and, these guys get more money, go and get paid, folks. This is not a bad thing at all. Terry Westbrook says, late, but an everydayer. Love your shows, dude. I love you. I love y'all for being here. So I'm thrilled that you're all here hanging out with me, talking hoops deep in the off season, right? Deep into the off season, and y'all have tons of questions. And I dig it. We're going to start to wrap up somewhat soon, but we can go for a little bit longer here. Young Kilminati says, Jose and Dyson leave no space for Kyra. I agree. Dyson's going to be in there. I do worry that maybe Jose will lose his spot in the rotation, whether it's for Jordan Hawkins, whether it is, maybe to give it more of a shot to Kyra Lewis Jr. I think those two of the guards are on the outside looking in, going into the rotation next season. So yeah, that's kind of the rotation's tight. Like, they have a lot of talent there. You could see Najee Marshall potentially getting dropped too. As Leon Alvarado asked a question about him, do you think Najee should start working out with Fred Vincent? If he gets a jump shot, he would get so many more minutes. He would, and I don't think his shooting's terrible. He was not great this past year. Like, he does, he's like Josh Hart light, right? Like, goes out and just hustles and does all of those things and plays some defense for you. That's what you want for him. It needs to be, everyone needs to shoot better. Everybody in the NBA, this is not just a Najee thing, needs to shoot better. So yeah, if anyone works out and gets a jump shot, you're going to get like significantly more minutes. What did he shoot last year? Oh, he doesn't really shoot threes well at all, huh? Did he shoot better? Okay, no. 30% last season on almost 3 attempts per game. Yeah, that number's got to go up. Like, that's not great. That's definitely not great. Daniel Brown says, great show, man. Hope all is well every day are here. I hope all is well with you. I hope all is well with all of y'all as I see Twitter notifications here. And hold on. JaVale McGee to the Sacramento Kings. All right. Well, we don't need to worry about that anymore, do we? I'm not deleting it off of here, but the Pelicans clearly said no to JaVale McGee. So there you go. All right, we'll end this here, and that's probably going to be a whole show. And it's one I've been thinking about, but I'll give you a little bit of a preview here as we're getting closer to 45 minutes or so. Nola G asks, Jake, are you confident in our coaching staff, and what do you think the team will miss with Teresa Witherspoon being gone? I am confident in the coaching staff. I do think Willie Green is a good head coach. There are some limitations to what he does. There are areas he needs to work on, but getting the kind of buy-in that he's gotten from the players, I think, is a very, very big deal. he connects with them on the right kind of level, partially because I do think having playing experience can go a real long way in the NBA, and he definitely has that, from his career. With losing Teresa Witherspoon, what I would say to that is I think there were some people in and around the organization that just didn't think she was doing the best job at coaching, maybe connecting with Zion, yeah, but it goes beyond just doing that. And so that's why I think they wanted to kind of shake up the coaching staff. Willie Green didn't really get to bring in people that he wanted to bring in. It was a lot of holdovers from Stan Van Gundy and even more holdovers from the Alvin Gentry tenure and even some holdovers from Monty Williams' tenure too. And I like all of those. But I do think that they wanted to let Willie Green just bring in his people. That's going to add a lot more cohesiveness, but we'll kind of break down the staff and everything. Look, I think trying to revitalize the offense, even if I'm a little bit skeptical of what James Borrego can do with that based on his tenure as the Charlotte Hornets head coach. And was he really the one doing the offense? Was it someone else? Look, he's a coach who knows how to build an offense, and it's a movement-based offense. It's not, no one can do that here. So I do think that is what you will end up seeing happening. And if it pays dividends, we're going to like the coaching staff again. Kind of as simple as that. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Thank you all so much for being here. That was a great question. I appreciate everyone who's made Locked On Pelicans part of your day here. I'm looking forward to more games, FIBA this weekend and everything. If you have ideas for the show, let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. Let me know on Twitter @NolaJake. We got a fun thing that I'm going to roll out in the next week or two where you can interact with me more, become a Locked On Pelicans insider. I'm going to put stuff in this that you don't get anywhere else. So stay tuned for more about that as well. I'm excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. The season's, we're like a month away from Media Day almost. October 2nd is what I think it's going to be. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So this has been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm going to record another podcast, and then I'll tell you all what that one is. It's called The Dime. It's going to be a lot of fun. I love doing that show. I'll be back on Monday. And as always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, @NolaJake on Twitter. I'll see y'all next time.